All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the show. With you, as always, me, Ben. Today, I'm joined by Tyler Hoover. Tyler is the owner of Refracted Wolf Apparel, Counterculture Incorporated, and the Antihero podcast, which you're going to hear a lot about. But first of all, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on, being our guest today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Um, we'll get into, there's a lot that went on with the Anti-Hero podcast, and then you got this new project with Counterculture, and then your Refracted Wolf, that's already got like badass designs to it. But first, can you tell us about, where you're from, what you're, kind of just where you came from, and what brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, and then I graduated high school. I was a shitty community college student, so that was during Bush's surge to Iraq. So I joined the army and was stationed at Fort Bragg after airborne school, and then went to Baghdad, and then did a couple years in garrison and got out. And essentially I utilized the GI Bill, got my degree, and then I became a cop. That's my professional career in a nutshell.
Did uh did you enjoy your time in the military while you served? It sounded like it was a pretty short stint.
Yeah, it's 4.5 years. I mean, it's a wild ride. It's one of those things I suggest it to every young man, or yeah, every young man. That's just something that I don't think you necessarily have to do like anything crazy. I think being able to don a uniform and serve your country is it teaches you discipline, it teaches you life experience, it gets you out of your hometown for a little bit, you know, and then it pays for college on top of that. So it's like it's a no brainer. It's just whether or not you want to do some dumb shit like infantry or stuff like that. That's you sitting in the woods wondering what the hell you're doing.
Oh yeah. Then there's worse. People think like the infantry's the worst one. Like there's so many shit jobs you can get that make you question your time in where you're like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
You get out, you go to college. Which your degree, I guess, was it for Homeland Security or was it
hmm
what it would it go for?
Yeah, I went Homeland Security and Terrorism Studies.
And then you immediately did you get a job? Was it sheriff's department or where did you start at?
I started in Volusia County Sheriff's Office, which is like the Daytona area of Florida. I did a couple years there and then realized that like there wasn't a lot of lateral movement and the pay was way better in another county. So I switched over. Same uniform, different county. Looks exactly the same.
What as you're going through all this, what made you start like your own podcast? Like what made you jump into that world?
So originally COVID hit, and I don't know, I just got a wild hair in my ass. I was like, I'm gonna start an apparel company. So I started Refractor Wolf Apparel in summer of 2021, and I remember thinking like, I need to get on podcasts to advertise my apparel line. Like I didn't, I had, but the problem is I knew nobody on podcasts. Like I didn't know any person with a podcast. I knew no podcast, so I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll start a podcast, but make it just kind of like the marketing arm for my apparel line, right? Just free advertisement. And then it turns out the podcast became way more successful than my apparel line. So it still is great advertising. We obviously me and Brent, we our businesses have benefited tremendously from having this podcast. But yeah, at the end of the day, the podcast for me is more successful than the apparel line at this moment.
Yeah, and then with Brent, how did that happen? Because I know for a while it was just you doing it, and then you kind of linked up with Brent, right? How did that all work out?
I was on the SWAT team at the time, and they were like, "Yeah, we got a Delta Force guy coming to train us." And Brent's from this area, so um, I saw this little shy Brent, sitting in the conference room, where we were having our morning briefing before training. He didn't really talk much. He didn't talk at all. He was super shy. He's not like the fucking Brent we know now, but he trained us. If I remember correctly, it was bust hostage rescue, and then a couple months later, I left the team and I started this podcast. And I was like, I wonder if that Delta Force dude will be a guest on my podcast. So episode 12 was Brent's first time on the Antihero podcast. It was my first big guest, and it went really well. Anytime you put Delta Force on something, it's gonna, I was like, oh, that's the key
Yeah,
is
yeah, it blows
fucking
up.
click.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like, and then he came on. He did episode 12, and then he did episode 37, 35, one of the somewhere in the 30s, and it was just called Delta Force and Cigars, and all he was just another guest, and he was promoting a cigar line. That's it. And he on that episode, he said, 'cause we all know Rob O'Neill didn't kill Osama bin Laden, and I was like, whoa, pump the brakes, what? And he goes, yeah, you didn't know that, and I was like, no, I didn't know that. And he goes, yeah, everybody knows that, right? So that was it. It was like 30 seconds. Well, I made a clip of that. That was my first viral clip ever. It was in the millions on every platform. Delta Force calls out Rob O'Neill. So the backlash that came from that, well, I don't want to say backlash isn't it's negative, but the impact that made, Brent had to make an entire Rob O'Neill breakdown, episode 37, which is one of our
Oh, and
best
that's where that
episodes.
came from. Yeah. Yeah.
However, Brent technically wasn't on the podcast. He was a guest doing that. He didn't come on the podcast until episode 40. When I looked at the numbers for the Rob O'Neill thing, I was like, Brent, I was like, I need a co-host. That's the next logical business step. And I was like, you are perfect for this job. You are the perfect business partner for me. And ever since that, the rest is history.
Yeah, you guys kind of went down like these. For those that don't know about it, they've discussed, Marcus Luttrell, Rob O'Neill, um, Tim Kennedy, which is one of the. It's kind of
Yeah.
a deep dive because there's like two parts to it, and there's kind of a tail, but the big thing I would push is that um, the other stories you guys tell on there, like the combat controller you guys just had on, or the vet TV guy
Yeah.
that earned a silver star in combat, like those stories almost make it like even crazier because it's just these actual like amazing stories of average people that turn into something extraordinary. And number one, I just kind of inside baseball, I guess, but like one, how are you linking up with these guys? Is it just all network and stuff? And then two, um, for the ones where you're actually like discussing controversies, uh, like those other ones I listed, and then like extortion 17, are you guys like deep researching it? Are you like reaching out to people? Like, how's that go?
So we typically, oh man, the guests come in various different ways. Mostly they're all suggested to us. People reach out to us. We when I say we do our best, we do our best to vet people. Make sure they're not full of shit. We've been pretty successful at that. I don't think anybody's really slipped through the cracks yet. But yeah, we have when we do a breakdown something like that, we have an SME there, a subject matter expert. So usually it's our guest, Extortion 17. The SME on that topic was uh, Billy Vaughn, the father of one of the SEALs on Extortion 17. We've had the Breonna Taylor breakdown. We had John Mattingly on. He was shot in the raid. He wrote a book about it. He's the perfect person to have on to talk about it. The Marcus Luttrell one, we actually had
Yeah.
Eric Deming, the SEAL. He came on and brought all that to light. Me and Brent were like, whoa, what? So,
He's been on a bunch of stuff now in the past like 6 months of kind of discussing it all. Yeah, he was a really big one. Do you find when you go back and hear stuff, have you found any like gaps in it or anything, or is everything holding up pretty solid?
everything holds up pretty solid. Every now and again, you'll get a detail that's explained better, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that explains that. Then that takes the suspiciousness away from that detail. Um, but it doesn't take away the suspiciousness from the entire incident. And so, for instance, like on Extortion 17, the five guys that walked up to the crash site before the Rangers got there, Billy Vaughn, in what 20 years, has not been given an explanation on who that was. The military couldn't tell him. No one could tell him who the five guys that walked up to the crash site were and then left. We did the story, we said, hey, we don't know who they are. Well, it turned out a bunch of people reached out to us. That was a squad from 10th Mountain Division. They were out there, completely different mission. And but if we had never put that out there, no one from 10th Mountain would have known to be like, oh yeah, that was us, dude. So it's little things like that. We'll correct it if we get it.
Yeah. And that's like such a small part, but it explains a lot more to what you're trying to detail and shit. So that's good.
Yeah.
Do you plan from where you're going now? Do you see it getting like? I already saw the fucking Andy Stump episode with a hot tub, but like, that's a pretty damn big guest. Like he has like two different podcasts. He's pretty renowned, and I'd say the vet bro community, but more just like the military in general knows him pretty well, and he's a spectacular dude. That's a step. Do you just see it going up further from there, like reaching out to more and more like that?
I hope so. Obviously there's, you know, if you had told me 2 years ago I'd be sitting in a hot tub with Andy Stump doing a podcast, I would have, I'd be like, what? That's fucking gnarly. But it shit happens. And, a lot of that stuff is due to me and Brent have a perfect dynamic. I do a lot of the management, back end production, all the editing, all the social media. Brent is, it is what it is, man. He is a draw. Like he is a draw. He has a lot of connections that I would never have with, on my own. A lot of people respect Brent. They respect his history and his career. That's the reason why, like, that's the only reason why Andy Stump was here. It wasn't because of me. I mean, obviously, it was a team effort that made it all happen. But I'll give credit where credit's due. Andy's a
Yeah,
solid dude. He flew in on his own dime. Wouldn't take a cent from us. Stayed at a hotel on his own
yeah,
dime, and a straightforward guy. I really liked him.
that's great, man. And then what about this newer project, Counterculture, with I think it's Reagan Rice from
Yeah,
Conduct Unbecoming, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
how's that going?
well, we were on a media network called Fox Media, like Guy Fawkes, like Fawkes. With my
Yeah,
what with was I don't want me to sound like dramatic, but was my friend Eric Tansey. Um, we were on that company. We were on that media site forever. We didn't really get anything in return. Um, and we brought in all of the numbers like that. Out of that, we brought in like 95 to 98% of the downloads. Um, and we put out the TK episode. Well, Eric just put out a book, and his co-author is Nick Palmshano, and that whole TK thing
oh
caused a
shit.
lot of problems for him. And he went on a podcast, and somebody asked him about it. He's like, "Listen, man, I'm not the type of guy that rips people down, blah blah blah." So I said what I said to him in a group text. I was some choice words, uh, mainly being like "you're a cuck" for Tim Kennedy and stuff like that. He got all butthurt. Reagan cut a fucking hour-long YouTube video about how disappointed he was in Eric Tansey, and we decided around
Jeez.
there it was time to break ties. But we didn't have a media company to go to, and so a podcast this size should definitely have a media company. And it's definitely, whether you're small, like starting out or not, there's so many benefits to being part of a company, an umbrella or company. So we were like, fuck it, let's start our own. Me and Reagan put our two on there as the biggest ones, and then it's it's really just a first responder veteran based one. It doesn't have to be, but military first responder network, and we got, the only thing we ask for is the RSS feed. That's it. We don't have any fees, and we do live shows. We have connections. We get guests. The goal is to get sponsors. The goal is to be able to use Antihero and Conduct downloads and be like, listen, hey, we want to pitch these ads, or we want to pitch ad companies, and then share the wealth to smaller podcasts. Like, hey, this company right here wants you for a month to read for 4 episodes this ad, and they'll pay you X hundred amounts of dollars, right? And smaller podcasts can decide, hey, we'd like to make a couple $100. I would pay for some equipment. We'll do it. So that's kind of like you're like brokering deals in our industry from ad people to podcasts.
Yeah. And that's good. I think it shows that you're actually trying to support the lower entities because you know how it is, like starting up. It's hard as shit. Like you're trying to figure out a whole nother, like we talked about, a side job basically that takes almost the full time amount to jump into. Um, what what exactly are you and Reagan discussing on your guys' podcast though? What are you guys going to dive into?
So yeah, me and Reagan have the counterculture buddy podcast that we do, but that's essentially just to start like showing awareness to counterculture in general. Um, we're gonna have a couple shows on the YouTube, um, and just kind of like forming it right now. And I mean, it's a buddy podcast. We talk about nothing of merit, but it's fun. We try to have fun,
Those are
and
fun, yeah.
so yeah, I mean, we talk about just things like mine and Reagan's conversation, but with Mike's, and I feel like that's a little entertaining to some people.
Yeah. Do you with where you're at now, are you facing a lot of like I'm sure you get a lot of like support. Is there a lot of backlash coming at you besides like that whole thing you were talking about with your friend, but are you facing like people reaching out to you being like you're full of shit or like that kind of stuff or is it pretty positive for the most part?
It's really positive. No one, we get, and every now and again, the Tim Kennedy fan club, that just they're so mad that you would question anything. I mean, that's once in a blue moon. I mean, they'll come in the live chats and they'll say obscenities and stuff, and we have to kick them out. But nobody of merit, I think Brendan Schaub has said on Twitter, he said some stuff about us because he's Tim Kennedy's friend, but he didn't do any research. I want to say he,
But he
he
also has his own he has his own type of like can of worms too if you
yeah,
go down that rabbit hole.
yeah, exactly. I know Jason Redman, uh, he said like, "Damn, dude, I feel like I got taken advantage of because we reached out. Brent reached out to him after Tim Kennedy went on his podcast and said, "You didn't do your research, Jason. Here's what we know." And Jason was like, "Damn, he got me." Mike Perry. We're good friends with Mike Perry on the Overdogs podcast. I think that was like just I don't want to say a publicity stunt, but he's a good businessman. He knows what sells. I think he knew having Tim Kennedy on was just, he knew we'd break it down. It's just good for business. So, and he's not Mike Perry's not a military dude, so he doesn't really know.
Yeah, I saw that episode come out and I'm like, what the hell is he doing on this show? Like no offense to the Overdogs podcast, you're just like this doesn't really correlate too well. I don't but
Yeah,
you
I
and
think
then you
there's
kind of listen to it a little bit and it's
Yeah, I think they were going with the
publicity.
whole UFC take on it. I think that was their kind of like
Yeah.
rig.
Yeah. Do how is it handling your schedule like as a you're are you still like a full-time police officer or like how's that work?
It's the most insane thing in the world. At current, like I mean, Jesus, man, just to find a 2 hour gap for both of us to sit down. And now there is a time difference too. That makes it even harder because you're like, how about 10 or 11 your time? Or you said 10 or 11. I'm like 10 or 11 your time or my time? like, and
Yeah.
scheduling is fucking wild. It is my patrol schedule, and then all the podcasts is based off that, and then all the other businesses are based off that. So it's just there's always something to do. Um, I have I have like bad anxiety and an addictive personality, so I have to have like things to do, or I'll sit around and get really bored really quick, and there's always work to be done. So, but it's stuff I enjoy. I do
Yeah.
enjoy everything I do, so it's not that bad. I shouldn't be bitching about it. I could still be an
No, I
errand.
mean it's 1 year, 1 year left. No, it's like it's crazy just trying to balance all that, like you said, and then you got family on top of that too, and hopefully you got somebody, and it looks like you have someone who supports you through it, so that can make a world of difference too to like have that in your
Yeah,
corner.
you have no idea. My old lady runs the entire house, all the kids. When I'm like on my day off, when I'm out and I'm gone for 12 hours, the studio is 5 minutes from my house. but we're here, and then we actually got the studio, and now we're realizing like we're two fucking retards, like me and Brent, like we have to maintain and upkeep this giant building, and we're like, there's always something to clean, like there's always something to put away. Like we moved in, I want to say pretty much end of December, beginning of January, and we're still not like fully moved in. There's shit everywhere because we're just all so busy. But it's those are good problems to have.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's that's good though. But like, how's that also work with like your on top of all that stuff? You got refracted wolf, right? That seems to be growing and growing and growing, and you're trying to put out those orders. Do you, I don't know if the term is like subsidize it through another company to fill those orders, or is that you guys pumping all that stuff out?
That's a great question. No one's really asked that. I can tell you've kind of looked into the industry a little bit, but no, I do everything myself. I order the shirts wholesale. I take the blank shirts to a print shop. I take the design that my designer got. I email it to the print shop. They print the shirts. I pick them up. I fold them, bag them, tag them, package them, and ship them. So we have everything we have on inventory. So like if it's for sale on the website, I have that shirt in our warehouse here. Um and
Oh, cool.
yeah, and I mean Refracted Wolf isn't the most time consuming thing in the world. Once you have a system down with an apparel company, my wife does a lot of that. My wife does a lot of the social media managing of it. You just got to stay on top of orders. Like if you miss a day or two because you're busy, and you're like, oh, you get home from out with your wife at 11, you're like, I can't package orders. Well, tomorrow there's going to be double. And if you wait another day, it's going to be quadruple. So you have to stay on top of orders. Plus, people want, they put in order, they want them. And, the one of the most time spent for people when they own an apparel line is figuring out marketing ideas, like marketing, like getting, like advertising, like, that's a lot of their time is spent reaching out, and I already have that with the podcast. So I kind of get to double dip in the sense that when I'm spending time on the podcast, I'm spending time on growing that, aka, expanding the marketing for my apparel line.
Yeah. Well, it's good. At least it's all in a positive growth, so you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Um, I had to ask the having those guys. I have to jump just to it one time to get it out of my system. With the second Tim Kennedy episode because it's been on my mind since I talked to you. You get those three dudes on, and you were gonna have I know the fourth and fifth guy that were the medics, I think, and you're talking to that. Is that kind of like emotional sometimes with like dealing with all that stuff because it's such a heavy topic, and I feel like a lot of people think, like you said with clips and stuff, sometimes people take it out of context and they think you guys are running down the vet community or trying to tear others down like a bag of crabs. What do you think is going on there?
I don't get emotional about it. None of these motherfuckers get emotional about it. They are making a lot of money, putting their face out there, telling their story. If they're telling a completely fabricated story, that's on them. But I mean, no one. I mean, if we have one of our guests, that stuff gets heated. I've seen tears in the eyes of the guests. I've seen tears in the eyes of Brent. I'm not a bitch, so I don't cry. But
Hell yeah, hell
but
yeah.
those do get real. Those conversations, and we talk. We used to joke like, "Hey, man, come tell us about the worst day of your life," because that's what we're doing. We're asking them to go back and tell us about, and you'll see they haven't been there in a long time, and they'll start tearing up. That stuff's pretty deep, and but as far as like all this fucking soft drama, dude, they all want that. The only person not benefiting from that is Tim Kennedy right now. He's the only one, and sometimes I feel bad, but he brings it on himself. He won't even. I People are like, oh, just admit it, just come out. I'm like, fuck it, just go away for 6 months. Just go away. Say, babe, we're taking our savings. I'm gonna go on a sabbatical, and for 6 months, I'm not gonna be on camera. Everyone will forget about it, but he just can't do it. And I didn't care too much about Tim Kenny because it's not my world. I don't care too much about the soft community because I was never in it. But Tim Kennedy saying that he had 17 like Valor Awards. Like hearing the stories of people that actually have Valor Awards and him taking that, like that did piss me off a lot.
Well, yeah, because then you start to like think about too. Like for me, I've been in 10 years now, so like my first 5 years, I had a lot of NCOs, like higher NCOs that were GWAT dudes, but they were also conventional army, and I don't know if they get as much traction really as the soft community because they're out there in the public a lot more.
Yeah.
But those old conventional dudes saw a lot of crazy shit, and you respect them for it. They tell you certain stuff, and you earn that respect. And then you learn that people are lying about it, and you're like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, how do you not have a fucking heart?" So,
Yeah, I can only imagine the stolen valor ish stuff going on in a non wartime army. Like, because I mean, what do you do in the army? Are you allowed to say if you don't want to say?
yeah, I'm Seaburn. It's like the pro mass guy,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
all that type of shit. Yeah.
Do they attach you to another company, or are you in a Seaburn company?
No, I did 3 years in a Seaburn battalion. Then I was in a signal unit. Then I was in group for a little bit, and then I was a drill, and now I'm in an aviation unit. So you go like
Oh,
all over. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When you join the military and like, oh, our Seaburn might not be like the most like, interesting job out there, but look at all the places that you got to go. Just because that's your
Oh
specialty
yeah.
like that to me is enjoying a military career. I know right now you're in the thick of it, so it's like, ugh. But you look back, you're like, man, I got to be in aviation. I got to see that soft world. I got to see like all these different worlds. But,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, I mean, like, what year did you join? Two, 2014,
I joined in 15.
15.
15, yeah.
Yeah, shit. The war was pretty much over then, huh?
It was, yeah, I got one deployment, but it was to Bagram, so it was really nothing. I was just hanging out. And it was a signal unit, so it was just like covering the networks, making sure they don't go down. And I was just in S3 doing random shit. So
Hey, man,
it's
you
it,
got to go. That's the you might not have been
well,
out there
and that's all people want, man. That's all. When I joined, like, when did you join?
2007.
Oh, damn. But
Yeah.
that's all everybody wanted, from like basically that time frame to like probably like 17 or 18. Now it's shifted. Now, like, the new guys, they really don't look forward to that,
No,
I don't
that's
think.
not it.
But
It's not in their. It was not one of the reasons why they joined. To go to war.
no, it's all benefits and stuff. Just, which is to each their own. Like, I'm not disputing anybody for it, but it's just a different mentality. And it's super hard to, like, it's hard as shit to lead a place like that when, like, everybody that's like 10 years and above joined for completely different reasons. So
Yeah. What made you
it's
get into podcasting?
I actually was trying to debate if I was going to get out of the army or not. So I just started. This originally was called Why We Serve. So,
Okay.
like, I was just interviewing people about why they joined, why they stayed in, why they got out, all that. And I kind of hit a mark because it was in the middle of my drill time. So I was like running out of guests, and I didn't know how to do this online shit of talking to people. So I started reaching out to friends, I talked to him, like, even my dad. I just interviewed him about his life. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you start learning everybody has these crazy ass stories, whether they're military or not.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of my stuff levitates to military because that's just who I know. But man, you start to like ask other people, like, just like go to like the Farmers Association where they sell feed stores, and those dudes have like interesting lives. So
Yeah. I mean, I my I always say this: when you start a podcast, if you're not already famous, right? You're not already famous, then you're going to have to start a podcast interviewing your friends and family. And my dad was episode 5
yes,
of the Antihero podcast. So
yeah, yes.
yeah, it is what it is. The homies get you through it. And I never forget those guys. And those guys are, they're alumni and Antihero. They are the ones that got me up to where I am. And now, they all bust my balls, Mister Big Time, Mister Big Time. But I never forget where I came from.
Yeah. And do you see like with the progression, like we talked about, from Andy Stump going further with that? Do you also see you guys addressing more issues in the future?
The only one I know right now, I because soft is the way it is, the big targets are celebrities. So like I can't really do it. I can't be like, yo, Brent, we're going after this person because it's not my lane. I could find tons of cops to go after, but at the end of the day, no one knows who the fuck they are. So um I think the next big one Brent's been hitting about Shrek for a long time. He brought it up again the other day. I just think
Ooh,
that it
yeah.
it takes so much it takes a lot of time and you can't just go with like, oh, we know with this one story and then a bunch of like contributing things. It has to be a podcast episode worth of lies, and that's just really hard to come by. Like Dakota Meyer, I heard his I've heard different stories about his Medal of Honor, how it might not have been as truthful as it should have been. But at the end of the day, you can't make a podcast about that. Like he still got the Medal of Honor. There was a lot of things that still happened. So
Yeah, I mean that it's such a touchy subject, especially with, like you said, a Medal of Honor. I mean, that's just hard as
yeah,
hell. But I mean, that Shrek one, I think when I've talked to other guys in the Army about this type of stuff, you can tell you can just sense when someone's giving an interview when they're lying about shit. Like, it's not like this magical thing. It's just like the bullshit meter goes off a little bit, and you're like, okay, some of this sounds legit, but some of it you're like, you're either being way too nonchalant about it or you're being way too fucking specific.
yeah,
And all these guys getting interviewed, like some of the shit, it's which sucks because a lot of their stories are amazing in and of itself. You don't
yeah,
really have to throw the relish on there.
yeah. I don't know, man. I think these guys are used to living an extreme lifestyle where they're the man, and then they get out and life doesn't care about them, so they got to go continue that feeling that like I'm awesome, and they go out there and they say dumb shit on interviews that you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Even I know you're fucking lying.
Yeah. With Brent, have you guys, like, I know he's like kind of your business partner with this stuff, but have you guys actually developed like a pretty close friendship across all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Brent's one of those friends for me where if he said bring a shovel, I'd be like, okay, no questions asked. Like, we don't. It's funny, me and Brent really don't hang out that much because we're both so fucking busy. Like, we are both so busy, and we meet to do the podcast, and I think that's why it's so successful. Is because not one of us uh like lags at all. We're both go 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 go, and we both, we have difference of ideas sometimes about what we should and shouldn't do and how the growth and expansion. But you know, like he is. I mean, I look at it this way: like if I were to get married right now, like yes, he would be in my groomsmen party without a doubt. But it's just one of those things. We don't really hang out too much, but we hang out so much at work that it's like, we don't really.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, and the squad cast is kind of like a hang session more than like a full deep
well, I'll
dive or
let you
anything
in.
like
I'll give
that.
you some insight on the squad. Man, the squad cast is like, we show up. We have to run through tech. We have to run through, get the studio like functioning, and then we do it, and then there's all kinds of people around because we invite everybody to come to the squadcast. So there's usually like anywhere from 5 to 12 people here. You're trying to be a good, it's just the squadcast get chaotic for, for sure.
Yeah. I was watching the live chats and stuff, and I'm like, people are throwing like $50, $100 chat, the super chats. And number one, I never watched a live stream on YouTube before, so
Oh
I
yeah,
never saw how that works. And then I'm like, holy fuck! But then I'm seeing what people are throwing to get a comment up, and I'm like, holy shit! There's some people invested in this shit. Like, But that's awesome for you guys that you grew this from like that little nugget to like people are throwing $100 just to be like, "What's up, candy dump or whatever the fuck?" Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's and that all started because we couldn't manage the comments. Like, there was no way we could like the comments were so they're just so fast. So we were like, hey, just throw a super chat up there, maybe like $1 or two, just so it pulls yours apart from everybody. And then people started being like, well, I want my notice, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And we'll hit a time constraint. We'll have to be like, yo, $20 and up. We can't read anything underneath $20. And it sucks
Yeah.
because we look like money grubbing assholes, but it's the only way. I mean, YouTube takes 30% of all that. So we only walk away with
Oh
70%.
wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That
Yeah.
sucks. Do you said you invite a lot of people over. Do you kind of got like a behind the scenes crew that's like supporting you with all this stuff now or
Yeah. We have Drew that does the on-site production. Like, he does the production in real time. So like he's the one doing he's learning sound, he's learning Drew had no background in production whatsoever. He's been learning on the fly. He's been doing a great job. Um but he's our uh like in the moment production guy. We have Vanessa, who's not here uh currently. She lives in Florida, but she lives in a different part of Florida at the moment. But yeah, she does a lot of our marketing and guest coordination and stuff like that. Um, and we got tons of friends that just help out. They come all the time, and they smoke cigar. Well, I mean, we got like Magnet and just like all these people that are always here, and they've been here since day one. So yeah, we got like a
hell
little.
yeah.
That's our work crew, and then we just have a lot of people that come hang out.
So is it like a studio now that you guys have or is it like a whole building that like supports your other businesses?
It's an entire building. If you walk in, the first area is a lounge because we were having nowhere for people to hang out. Like, they were coming to hang out in the studio. We're trying to set up. Like, if we get a guest that's comes, like, well, we're shooting at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, and you show up at 1:30 punctual. We're always fucking late, so we're walking in at 1:59. We got to set up the studio, so we need somewhere for you to sit. We have a lounge with a TV, a fridge, snacks, couches, you know, whatever, and then that's also doubles as a hangout spot for us all when we're having, yeah, it's a lounge. There's a bar. There's tons of couches. I'm in the corner of it right now. Um, and
Yeah.
then you go into the middle part of the building, and that's the studio. That's the big, like, it looks like a production set. And then you go into the next part, and that's the storage facility. Or not, it's the warehouse portion of it where we store all of our merch and stuff like that. So that's a big building.
No. Yeah. That had to be like a big jump for you too, right? Like going from like kind of working it from your homes or whatever and then you go into that. Was that like a big then you're like, "Oh fuck, this is becoming something."
Yeah, it's a dream come true, dude. I mean, this all started in my den. We moved to Magnets when I joined up with Brent. We moved to Magnets gun store um where Brent was slinging coffee out of. And then we moved to Brent's last the last location he was at. We built a studio in that one. Like, that was an anti-hero studio. When you said the first times you start seeing gray paint on the walls, I think George Floyd was the first episode where, I mean, it was under construction and we still shot it in there. And then we had some drama with the owner of the plaza, and Brent was like, "We got to leave." So um, we decided to pretty much put all of our companies together and buy one giant or rent one giant space. So that way, there's always somebody here, and like I said, man, that was a dream come true to be able to have a place of business. Like, our rent is covered. I mean, it's expensive, like our rent, and then you have uh internet fees, you have electricity fees, water's provided, but you have it just kind of adds up.
Yeah, but
But
it's like a whole nother house basically, like trying to cover that.
huh?
it's like a whole nother house trying to cover,
Yeah,
basically. If
we have a
relying
lot.
on that business to really,
We have a lot of income. It does get spent. Like I said, we now it's crazy. We have employees now. We have 1099 employees. We have um, you know, bills to pay. We have airlines to pay for guests. We have airlines to pay for us. But yeah, it's we're learning. We're just two retards with small businesses trying to figure it out. So that's
hell
the most
yeah,
useful statement I could ever say.
yeah. Well, good man. I'm uh I'm excited for where it's going for you guys because like you keep getting like all this cool stuff, and I can't wish you guys nothing but the best. And I'll throw all the links in so everyone can actually check out the stuff because the refracted wolf. I know it might not be the biggest, but it's just like those kind of badass designs that everybody likes, but like you can't really find them at like you can't find that shit at like a Walmart or a fucking I don't a fucking wherever really. But like it has all the good shit on there, and obviously I'd promote the shit out of Antihero just because you guys are funny as shit and you're having like better and better guests over and over. So I appreciate you so much for coming on here, Tyler, and telling us all about it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for letting me shamelessly plug all of our stuff. Yeah, Refracted Wolf is I just call it outsider apparel. It's veteran and first responder owned, so it is an all American company. It just we don't do the cliche like patriot and grunt style stuff.
Yeah,
Like I'm a big advocate, and if bridges got to be burned, bridges got to be burned in order to stay truthful. So people I say like I'm walking around burning bridges, like no, I'm just cutting bullshit out of my life. So things like that. On the back, it does have a huge middle finger with the skeleton middle finger, but
yeah,
but yeah. Some of them you can't wear at the pickup line at your kid's school, but they're all good shirts. Good quality, good designs.
yeah, um, yeah, man. And I'll I'll put them all in there. But thank you so much for coming on, Tyler, and I hope you have a good day.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me.